Have you ever been to a counter at a busy airport like this? What do you see? It's crazy busy. People in line, phones ringing, only one employee on hand to help people. Everybody's anxious to get going. And what do you see in this waiting room at a doctor's office? People coughing and sneezing, people running late who've been waiting a long time, and some very worried people too. And what do you see in this crowded restaurant? They're short-staffed, it's lunchtime, people are hungry and impatient, right? We've all seen situations like these. I know I have. Our jobs are hectic and ask us to deal with people under pressure every day. I'd like to try a little experiment with you. Put yourself in the place of the people whose job is to serve all these customers. How would you handle situations like these?
So, tough question. How would you handle situations like this? Dennis.
Before or after this training?
After.
After. The main point would be to put yourself on your customer's shoes. Right? If you're just thinking about yourself, I'm the only employee here behind this counter, I wouldn't be very happy, right? Because I'm thinking about me. Now, if you're thinking about the customer loyalty, if you're thinking about the person in front of you, it'll be very different, right? They're in line, they're all here to get someplace, they all have something different happening in their personal lives. So how would I treat them? A lot of respect, a lot of caring.
Respect, caring, empathy.
Yeah,
Erica.
I was just going to say empathy, just validating frustrations, anxiousness, and trying to get somewhere, or fed, or going back to work, or just getting on their flight. So
Yes, Ursula.
I think you always have to keep the customer's perspective in mind.
Yeah.
What are they really thinking, and what could their challenges be?
Thank you, Jessica.
I always think of my employees too as customers, and I look at that long airport line.
Oh.
I'd go over and encourage my employee and say, "You're doing a fantastic job, keep it up." And then I'd open up the next line and work side by side with them.
Yeah,
And
beautiful, side by side, love that.
Yeah.
What a great idea, side by side. Yes.
I was just going to say the empathetic part is really, really important in those situations. The one thing that bugs me when there's a big line is when the employees at the other counter are just avoiding eye contact because they don't want to acknowledge the line. They don't.
Anybody ever experienced that?
Oh, yeah.
I have. They see you coming and they're like.
So rather than avoid it, acknowledge it. So empathy would say, I understand it's a long line. Let's make the best of it and show that you're doing something, understanding what they're doing.
Beautiful. Oh, go ahead, Melissa.
I've also worked in a restaurant, so I understand the situation that he was talking about being short-staffed but having it busy. So one thing that I did was just to keep open communication with everybody that was coming in and that was already seated, and just maintaining that open communication and then reassuring them that we'll take care of them.
I love the way she said that. And one thing I've learned too, open communication doesn't mean you have to talk to everybody. Just a nod or I see you. That's communication. They feel like, yes, somebody saw me. Let's watch part 2.
So what do you see when you're faced with this kind of situation? It depends on who you are. If you're an empathic person, you see people, not problems. You see human beings, not hassles. You make a human connection with everyone. You say, I see you. I care about you. When you need to, you say, I'm sorry. I appreciate your patience. I'm going to take great care of you. You connect with your eyes, your words, and your heart. You see opportunities to be kind. No matter how busy you are, you let each individual person know that you know they are there and they matter to you. In my experience as an executive at different companies, I've never seen anything more powerful than this. You can't fake a human connection. You make a human connection. It's not just something you do. It's who you are.
Okay, now it's your turn. Choose a team leader at your table. Practice holding huddle 3. Follow the script in the leader guide. Right here, it's on page 24. Make a human connection. All right? I'll give you 10 minutes. I'll be here to help you if you have any questions or issues. Has everyone got a leader?
Yes, we do.
Leader, back here, Josh, who's your leader? Okay? Over here, Gerardo, got a leader?
No, right here.
Right here.
Leader, ready, go, 10 minutes.
Or
I think I'm getting it
show
now.
begin
Took a
classes
little work at first, but
or
I think I'm
she
getting it
could
now.
show that, you know, her
Good job.
Thanks for sharing that, Erica.
Facilitators, what you're doing right now is you're timekeeping, yes, but you're going from huddle to huddle, assessing, listening, making sure they're using the huddle guide. It's real easy to get off the script. And once they use that, they're much more comfortable. They're more animated. They get better information. So kind of floating from table to table is what I found to be very, very helpful.
Good self-observation. It's hard to sometimes. For me, this week I'll commit to making myself.
Okay, let's wrap it up. Give yourselves a round of applause for conducting a huddle. Here's what I saw, which I loved. Using the cards, using the script. That's what they're there for. Don't apologize for using those. Honestly, your teams love it when you use them, and it's a big help to you. So congratulations, well done.
Huddle 3 is about the first empathy practice, and it's participant-led. The first practice is make a human connection. Sandy, please talk about that.
A warm human connection is the first step towards empathy. And unfortunately, it's not common practice. I mean, again, we're all consumers, we're all out there, and how often do you go into a place of business and, hello, you know, you don't see me here? It's not hard, even when you're crazy busy, to acknowledge people. Just make eye contact, smile at them.
Exactly.
You know, we, through our body language, can make people feel welcome. And it's unfortunate that it doesn't happen more broadly.
You know, I was 16 years old working in a fast food restaurant, and a nice man pulled me to the side and he said, if you just look at somebody and acknowledge them, they'll wait forever.
Isn't that amazing?
Look at them and acknowledge.
That just making that connection buys you an incredible amount of forgiveness if you're busy and you can't get back to them for a few minutes.
Yeah. I'm also wondering if there are any particular challenges when you turn the first huddle completely over to the participants.
Yeah.
How does that
What
work?
I found really helps right off is helping them and select a table leader. And I always like to use that little trick where close your eyes, put your finger in the air. All right, someone point. Everybody point to someone, and you always get a laugh out of that. And you've got a table leader. Trust that the participants will own this process. Make sure that they know at their table they're in charge. Allow for the struggle. Obviously, as a facilitator, you want this thing to go well and go smoothly, and so you have to avoid the temptation of interrupting and taking charge. So direct struggling teams to the script. Oh, you're having trouble? It's right here. You know, take them right back to the script.
Yeah.
And then allow sufficient time. Monitor the time, and make sure that you stay on time, but give them plenty of time. Let's look more closely at what it takes to conduct an effective huddle. Please turn to pages 28 and 29 in the Leader Guide. After lots of experience on this, here are some tips we'd like to share with you. Tips for huddle leaders. Make it regular and frequent. It's all going to depend on your business and what you think is best for your team. But the fact that they're regular, that your team can count on them, and that they're frequent, 2 key tips. Secondly, keep it brief. Remember, it's not a staff meeting. This is a huddle, all right? And it has those 4 elements that we've talked about. Third, celebrate successes. I could have heard a little more celebrating this last time, guys. Honestly, I saw some high-fiving going on in here. Outstanding. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Use the practice cards. I loved seeing you guys use the practice cards. And then finally, commit to resolving issues you can't deal with now. Some things are going to come up, and you can put that in the parking lot, or you can say, hey, we're not going to handle that right now because this is our huddle, but I commit to you that I will take care of that issue. Once in a while, a thorny issue is going to come up. Hey, what about this? Great point. I commit to you that I'm going to take care of that. All right, so there's some tips for you for huddle leaders. All right? Any other tips that you'd like to share? Anything else come up? Yes, Josh.
Something on that I've found that my team really likes is the consistency aspect throughout the week. They know that at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, we're going to have a huddle.
Yeah.
And then on Wednesday at 2:30, we're going to have a huddle. So the expectation is set. They know when to be prepared for it and when to have topics of discussion ready.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes.
I can't stress the parking lot. So we do a weekly huddle, and it's very easy for people to want to just bring up issues, bring up stuff that's not part of this huddle. So I use that parking lot quite a bit. But it's that committing. So as a leader to commit to address and resolve it, that's sometimes an area of growth for me. But I need to make sure I write those down. But it's important.
Okay. On page 28 in your leader guide, I'd like you to write down a few of these tips that, for you particularly, that stood out. Tips that you would give to other huddle leaders. May not be these, may be something else that you've learned in this little exercise. Facilitators, I think this is a very important little exercise. Yeah, we've got some tips up here, but they're going to think of things that we haven't thought of and things that are particular for them or for their business. They're going to come up, and I think that's so valuable to know, for them to know that, hey, we don't know everything. They're going to think of things that are going to be useful to them. It's very important for them to get them down here on page 28. Anybody like to share your tips that you wrote down? Yes.
I would say become familiar with using breakaway statements and refocusing statements
Okay.
during the huddles. That way, again, if we have to have one of those parking lot conversations, you know how to break away from it without offending somebody. Because
Beautiful.
sometimes it takes a lot for somebody to be able to speak up.
Beautiful.
So to be able to have that breakaway and refocus statement it's important.
Yeah, I love that. Great idea. Yes, Garen.
Listen more, talk less.
Beautiful. Listen more and talk less. I actually had somebody who I worked with, she would sit on her hand to help her remember not to talk. And I think that's a great, great tip. We all talk too much. Yes.
One way to celebrate success is something really simple, like giving out a candy or something that's going to kind of emphasize that success. Great job, here's a candy. Or great job, here's a thank you card or something.
It's amazing how that works. How I've seen senior executives practically strangle each other for a Baby Ruth candy bar. Good point. Yes, Ursula.
I would say get the team involved, open up to conversation and sharing best practices.
Oh, perfect. Great. Yes.
Review the material before your huddle.
Thank you.
Because huddles are meant to be focused and timely, and so you can tell when someone hasn't looked at the material either recently or ever, and it just isn't fun to be in a huddle like that.
Everybody sat through a presentation where you knew it wasn't well prepared. What Nicole just taught us is so critical. Make sure you know the stuff before you attempt to teach it. Good point. Yes, Charles.
When you're celebrating the success, it needs to include things that were tasked from the previous huddle. Otherwise, every time we make commitments, people will think nobody's going to really follow up on it.
Yeah, what Charles just said is so critical. It's providing that continuity from the prior huddle to the current huddle, so they can see that there's some method to this madness and that they're connected. And as you saw in the earlier graphic, we went through the huddles, and that loyalty bar starts to increase as we move towards huddle 11. That's what Charles is talking to. Otherwise, it's just 11 huddles. But if you connect them like Charles said, then that loyalty is going to start to increase as we move through. Great point. So, looking through these tips here, looking through the tips that you guys have written down, you've come up with some great tips for other huddle leaders. However, there are teams who aren't together every day. These are called remote teams. And we do have some tips for virtual huddle leaders. Has anyone got that in their situation? Yeah, where your team's dispersed, they may be spread through the county or the state or the country. Here are some tips for what we call virtual huddles. And these could be conducted on the phone. That might be a video conference huddle. Number one, ask questions, and particularly of those who are dispersed. Make sure they feel like they're present. Ask them to ask questions. So say they're situated remotely, encourage them. You know, I know you're out there in podunk nowhere. What kind of questions do you have? All right? Third, keep your eyes on the camera. If it's a video conference, the worst thing you can do is snooze off or look into space, all right? Make sure they feel like you're talking, you're there, all right? Finally, include those who are not physically present. I've sat in these kinds of meetings, and they do tend to get forgotten. So you as the huddle leader really need to make an effort to make sure that everybody's included on those virtual huddles. Any comments? Yes, Charles?
I actually have a question. So what do you do on a huddle when you have people who can't make it or they work different time shifts, but they still report to you?
Great question. How would you help Charles with that? Anyone?
Like you were saying earlier, those either one-on-ones or maybe doing it multiple times a day, like in your previous companies that you spoke of earlier.
Ding, ding, ding. She hit it. That's what I do. As they come on shift during the day, or when they show up for work, say they were late, they had an emergency or whatever, take them one-on-one, say, hey, I just want to update you on what happened in the huddle today. And can you imagine what that does for somebody? That you would have that consideration to bring them up to snuff so they feel like they're part of the team. I love the way Leticia put that. That's exactly what we did at my last company, is we would have a one-on-one or 2 or 3 together as they came on shift during the day. Perfect. Great answer. Okay?
The huddle review discussion gives managers an opportunity to discuss their concerns and their questions about conducting the huddles, and they've had 2 chances now to conduct huddles. So Gordon, when you are facilitating this discussion, what are some of the pitfalls or hard parts of doing this, and how do you keep participants engaged?
Well, this is where the facilitator has a real role in keeping the discussion real. Questions like, what went well? What didn't go so well? What questions do you have about running a huddle? Avoid the rote review of the PowerPoint bullet points, or you just want to make this a discussion, give them a chance to talk. And it, again, puts the onus back on them, helps them realize we're going to be doing this ourselves at some point. This whole idea now that the teachers are learning how to teach. Allow the group to solve questions that are posed by participants. Someone asks a question, oh, that's a great question. How would you handle that? And what's a great way to answer this instead of the facilitator answering all the questions? So this is real world. This is a huddle where this is a chance where we want them to understand the huddle, but really talk about it, not just in theory, but what really is going to happen and what really happened in the 2 that you've already taught.
And from your experience, I mean, they're going to have questions about how am I going to pull this huddle process off, back at my place of work, right? I mean, all my employees, team members don't start at the same time. So how do I adjust to that? And you've got an interesting story about how you did that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it's a dispersed team or people who are spread apart, they're going to say, well, how do I do this? What happens if this happens? Or what if they say this? Or what if they do that? Again, throw it right back to the participants. How would you handle that?
And I think that's really important. You don't have to have all the answers, to all the questions that they're going to raise about how do I pull off these 11 huddles. But somebody in the group likely will. If you say, well, who'd like to comment on that?
Exactly.
And let them teach each other.
So as a facilitator, we don't need to know the questions to all the answers, and even if we do, what you're saying is we really want to let the group solve the problem. So bring up any concerns, any obstacles, and bring forth that wisdom, that brilliance that they already have, that they bring to the table, and then we can fill in the blanks, right?
You don't need to know the questions to all the answers, and you don't need to know the answers to all the questions. Either one.
Okay, great. That's very relieving.
Let's move to the next empathy huddle, listen to learn. Turn to page 30 in your leader guide. You're going to conduct huddle 4 in your groups. Before I turn it over to you, let's listen in on 2 versions of people trying to listen to each other. In this audio, a manager has had a problem with a customer, and he's taking a team member aside for a little one-to-one discussion of the problem.
Sue, I've got to talk to you.
Sure.
Listen, your attitude is unacceptable. I was on the phone with a customer just now, a Ms. Sadek. and I got an earful. You made her feel, well, honestly, talking about how dumb she is right in front of her, I tell you, she went off on me.
I didn't do that. She was returning a pedometer, and she wanted her money back. You know we can't do that.
Listen, your attitude isn't right. We're trying to create customer loyalty around
But
here.
I couldn't do what she wanted me to do.
I've told you and told you, you need to listen to people with empathy. If you can't do that...
I was just super busy. I didn't have time
Why
to...
didn't you train her on the product? If she'd had training, she wouldn't have had the problem.
She wanted to open the box, turn the thing on, and have it work. She didn't want lessons. That doesn't happen with anything else. You buy a toaster, nobody has to teach you how to make toast.
Okay, I gotta go, Sue. Go back and reread How to Treat Customers with Empathy. I'm gonna have to put a note in your file. Sorry.
How'd that feel? The beatings will continue until morale improves. Okay? Let's listen to part 2.
Sue, I really appreciate the job you've been doing the last few days, even though it's been crazy. I just wanted to clear something up. Can we talk for a minute?
Sure.
What do you remember about a Ms. Sadik who tried to return a pedometer? I really want to hear your perspective.
Well, she brought the pedometer back and said, I can't make head nor tail of this thing, and I want my money back. She was really ticked off.
Oh, wow.
So what I said was, can I help you figure it out? But she was on one. What she really wanted was a refund, and you know we can't do that. Besides, we were super busy that day.
It's tough on days like that.
It was just super busy.
The part that concerned me, and that I know would concern you, is that the customer felt like you were impatient with her or making fun of her. Do you know why she would have felt that way?
I guess she felt dumb because she couldn't get it to work on her own.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating for us because some customers need a lot more help than others.
Yeah, you're not alone. It is frustrating. What about this idea? There's some empathic language you can use with this kind of customer. I can walk you through it. We can talk for about 10 minutes tomorrow at 9. How does that sound?
Yeah, I'd like to know how to handle these people. I get 1 or 2 every day, and they hold everything up.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. Let's shoot for 9 o'clock tomorrow.
Now turn to your script, pages 30 and 31. Pick a leader at your table and go ahead and teach this huddle. This huddle has an activity associated with it. So if you'd please turn your page to these listening to learn cards. They're scenario cards. You've all got those. They're blue.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
The big ones.
And here's what we're going to do. We're going to be in pairs today. You guys will need to be a triad. That's okay.
Okay, okay.
And read what you decide. One of you is a customer and one of you is an employee. Okay? You can pick any of the scenarios. There's several. Read your scenario card yourself and then speak to the employee about it. All right? So you're the customer and you're a little bit amped over whatever's happening here.
Oh, okay.
Really let the employee have it. Okay? Employee, your job is to listen to learn. That's this huddle. When the customer is finished, repeat back what the customer said until the customer is satisfied that you have understood. After you've done it, you can trade roles. The other person becomes the employee, and the other person becomes the customer. Any questions on what the role play is?
No.
All right, ready, rock and roll, go.
Who do you want to be a customer?
I will be okay, that sounds good. I don't want to go to Irish.
Okay,
It's more uncomfortable.
So just because I said I live in that sometimes.
Right,
I'm gonna be
exactly.
okay.
Okay.
All right. So we doing
I
number one?
spent a lot of money on this.
Oh, yeah, whichever one you want.
I just cannot seem
Just the one
to
you
make
want.
it.
Okay, good time to switch. Trade roles.
You're like,
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I think all right. Make it or you cancel on the day. It's like you gotta pay the $40. That's tough.
Okay, guys, wrap it up.
oh, we're done. All right.
How'd that go?
I didn't see that.
It's good, actually.
It's like I saw this one already.
How hard is it just to listen?
Hard.
Hard.
It's difficult, yeah.
I was eavesdropping. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, sometimes when people listen,
they're not really listening because they're preparing their answer for three sentences, three things you said, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, he's telling me, oh, well, we've got people in the back who need help. Well, I'm leading here, you know, it's you're prepping your response for what they're saying and they're not even done, so you're not truly listening.
Yeah. How often are we preparing our answer while we're listening?
Oh, yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. This exercise was about listening. It wasn't about solving. And
I did try to solve.
everybody that I listened to was trying to solve the problem.
We all did.
And that's what happens. We are leaders and managers, and we're programmed to fix the problem. So I want to challenge you to listen more. How could you do that? What could you do to be better listeners, do you think? Any tricks or anybody? Yes.
Ask them how they would like to see it resolved, or ask them more questions.
And I think that's a really good thing to do, Leticia, when we get to the fixing part. But right now, we're just listening.
Really is making the effort not to think about resolving, to your point.
Make an effort.
If you listen and then you reply after it's done, you'll be more authentic at the same time, right? So it won't be prepared.
Yes.
Taking notes.
Beautiful. Did everybody hear him, Fernando? Right as they're talking, how much confidence does that give you when you're just giving it to them and they're taking, and then what? Oh, yeah. You're taking notes. That's a powerful way to listen. Thank you, Fernando. Ashley.
Pausing.
What?
Pausing.
Pausing.
By taking that moment to pause, it shows the person that you are listening, that you're processing the information that they're
You're processing it. Yeah, you're really listening.
I was just going to bounce off what she said. We call it the permission pause. So what that is when somebody's speaking, you pause, and it's almost like when they stop, it's giving you permission to jump in and ask the question or to reiterate what they
A clarifying question or whatever. So as they told you their story, that's a great idea. I've also found that if you can kind of repeat it, and then you felt terrible and you paid so much for this. Oh, and you bought it and the product wasn't worth. You kind of parrot back to them what they just told you. That's going to help them know that you really heard them. So kind of give it back to them. They tell it to you, and then you just kind of give it back to them. You understand? That was really great. So I would give you all not A's on that exercise. Because all of you went to fixing the problem. Everybody, and you felt this huge pressure to get it solved. That's not the exercise. This exercise is to understand and to make sure that they think and know that they're understood. All right? Thank you. That was really great. All right? So, great huddle. Thank you. We'll have our next huddle a week from today. Same time, same place. Empathy is a principle everyone on the team must learn and practice. But your job isn't done just because you listened, as important as that is. Good listeners go on to take responsibility for what they hear.
The second empathy practice is listen to learn. Gordon, are you listening? Yeah. Could you please share all you know about listening with us?
Yeah. So after we make that connection, we teach listen. And listening is so critical here with empathy. Pretending doesn't work. Don't pretend. Both customers and employees know when you're pretending to listen. When a person feels like someone is really listening to them, that's what changes their hearts. And that's when loyalty improves. That's when loyalty increases. And they become more loyal to you, both your employees and your customers. The exercise here in this huddle is to listen. Just listen. Don't try to respond. Don't try to solve, because the universal reflex is to solve. Remember, these are managers. They're predisposed to solving problems. They're used to having problems come to them frequently during a day. And that's where you as the facilitator can really help, because you're helping them understand, no, it's not the exercise right now. You're learning to listen. And what you have to do is to discipline yourself to listen.
I'm more likely to trust you if you're willing to understand me or listen, or at least try to understand me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that's where loyalty starts growing.
Exactly.
When we learn that.
Exactly.
And You know, empathy is a simple principle and it's very powerful when we practice it. I've also found that it is one of the hardest things to teach and one of the hardest things for us to practice. Do you have any advice on how do we teach this well as facilitators?
Well, you know, the best way to teach empathy, I think, is to show it. Show it through our actions, you know, as leaders, and how we deal with each other, and how we, you know, listen to customers and listen to employees. And that's why the videos are, this video is so incredibly powerful. As people watch this video, you're going to see the aha light go off in their head, like, wow, you know. It just puts people into the feelings of the people being portrayed in this video, and I think it'll really help to make this point.
It's exactly what happens. You can see the group and lights are going on all throughout the group.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Now this huddle is part facilitator-led and part participant-led. So Gordon, do you have any tips for us on how to manage playing two roles and transitioning from part to part during this huddle?
And it is a challenge. And I make sure up front that I let them know that in advance, I let them know I will be taking this back over at some point so we can show you the video. And we set time expectations so they know how much time they'll have to conduct their huddle. And then you as the facilitator need to monitor that time very, very closely. And monitor team progress closely so that you know what's going on at each table. It's not hard to do, but it really helps. And as you float from table to table, they're very aware, and it helps them stay on point.
Of course. Now at this point, do you find that they're getting more masterful at conducting the huddles, or are they still struggling a lot?
They're getting much more masterful, but they're still a little timid, especially when you as the facilitator show up at their table.
They get a little nervous.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Responsibility is the next loyalty principle. Please turn to page 34 in your leader guide. At this point, we'd like to mix up the teams. So if you start here and count off in fours. 1,
2,
3, 4,
1,
2, 3,
4,
1,
2,
3,
4, 1,
2.
3.
Thank you. Okay, 1's here, 2's there, 3's there, 4's here. We're mixing it up, guys.
4.
Take all your stuff.
I do.
Facilitators, this is a real important thing to do. They get a little, as you know, get a little tired in the same group. By mixing up the groups, we get a whole new level of interaction. They get to know some more people in the group. And so it's just a really great, at this point, to mix up.